This wasn't just a joke, this was a public execution disguised as laughter, and the moment Jon Stewart smirked into that camera, something inside Meghan Markle's carefully constructed world cracked.
Have to be this way. Hey, girl. Down on your luck.
As though it was the perfect compliment for what I was building at this point in my life.
Narcissist who cannot get enough of herself while she simultaneously plays the victim.
Jon Stewart looked at the camera, smiled, and compared Meghan Markle to France's First Lady.
The room laughed. Loud, instant, unfiltered. But here's the part nobody wants to admit. It didn't feel like just humor. It felt like recognition. Like people weren't reacting to a punchline, they were reacting to something they had already been thinking but never said out loud. And when Stewart compared Meghan to France's First Lady, it wasn't random, it was surgical. A quiet jab wrapped in a polished delivery, but underneath, it carried weight, intent, and maybe even a warning. Because watch closely, this wasn't chaos that built slowly. No, it detonated. Within minutes, social media didn't just react, it exploded. Memes flooded timelines like a wave nobody could stop. Edits, clips, side-by-side comparisons, people dissecting every frame, every expression, every second. And suddenly, Meghan wasn't being admired, she was being analyzed, picked apart, reinterpreted, reframed. And that's where it gets uncomfortable, because the laughter didn't stay inside the studio. It escaped. It multiplied. It turned into something bigger than the joke itself. The kind of laughter that shifts perception. The kind that doesn't go away after the segment ends. And for Meghan, that's where the real damage began, not in the joke, but in what followed it. Because this wasn't coming from critics. This came from someone people trust. Someone who usually aligns with her audience. And when that kind of voice flips, it sends a signal, a dangerous one, that maybe, just maybe, the narrative isn't what people thought it was.
How do you care for yourself?
Well, thank you for asking that. Well, look, I think part of what's really, really important is that love language of taking care of people also really feeds me. And I think that is in many ways part of myself. It doesn't feel like a typical stand and stir, which we all remember from back in the days. We stand, look at camera, and you're stirring something. I didn't necessarily want to do that. And I didn't want a reality show. And so the only way to feel as though you were still in conversation with me, I felt I had to be talking to the people in the room with me.
And here's the twist nobody saw coming. The people laughing weren't just outsiders. They were insiders, supporters, the same voices that once defended her, now joining the noise. Not aggressively, not angrily, just casually, like something had quietly shifted inside them. That's the moment everything changes. Because when your own crowd starts laughing, it's not just a joke anymore. It's a turning point. And suddenly, all those carefully built layers, strength, empathy, being misunderstood, they start to feel different, less organic, more constructed, more controlled, like a performance that's been running too long. And people notice that. They always do. And here's where it starts to sting even deeper, because this wasn't hate. That's what makes it more dangerous. Hate can be dismissed, ignored, brushed off. But this felt like people calling it as they see it. Calm, casual, almost effortless. Stewart didn't shout, he didn't attack, he didn't go overboard, he kept it simple. And that simplicity, it hit harder than any rant ever could, because it didn't feel forced. It felt real. And when something feels real, people latch onto it. That's exactly what happened. Because suddenly, Meghan's image, this polished, powerful narrative, started showing cracks. Small ones at first, easy to ignore. But once people saw them, they couldn't unsee them. Words like scripted, controlled, too perfect started floating around, not from trolls, from regular viewers, everyday people. And then came the panic behind the scenes.
Planned from the beginning. She denied being interested in the royal family, which she totally was. I know someone who knows the ex-husband who said she had a vision board with Prince Harry on it. And
Before they met?
Yes. And she wants to
That's
pretend.
impressive. You got to admit
Thank
that
you.
is impressive. I actually like the royal family. I think it's cool. So
that's another thing. She killed the queen.
she did kill the queen.
In my opinion.
Meghan,
Hi.
we're so excited to have you here today.
Thank you.
And I first want to just say congratulations to you on everything that you've done and everything that you're doing.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It's been a very full It's been a full few months, for sure.
Sources whispering about frantic calls, emergency meetings, damage control spinning into overdrive, labels being thrown at the joke, sexist, outdated, unfair, but none of it stuck because by the time those responses came out, the moment had already escaped containment. And once something like that escapes, you don't control it anymore. It controls you. And here's the most unsettling part. This didn't feel like a one-off moment. It felt like something that had been building quietly, finally surfacing, like the audience had been watching. watching, observing, noticing patterns, and all it took was one perfectly timed joke to bring it all crashing into the open. Because timing is everything. And this landed at the worst possible moment for Meghan. The question is, was it really bad timing or was it inevitable? Because when perception starts shifting, it doesn't need a scandal. It just needs a trigger. And Stewart might have just been that trigger. Now here's where things start getting even more complicated. Because once laughter turns into perspective, it doesn't go back. It evolves. And what people started seeing next, that's where the real story begins. And then came the moment where the illusion didn't just crack, it started collapsing in real time, right in front of everyone watching. And the silence that followed somehow felt louder than all the laughter that came before it. Because once people stop reacting emotionally and start observing quietly, that's when the real shift happens. The kind that doesn't trend loudly but spreads deeply. And suddenly Meghan Markle wasn't just being joked about anymore. She was being re-evaluated, reinterpreted, almost like the audience had collectively stepped back and said, wait, something feels off here.
Between the series and between the brand, I thought, how interesting is it to be able to listen to the conversations of someone building a business while they're doing it.
She has done the world premiere episode of actually being on someone else's podcast. And the someone else is her name is Jamie Kern. And in the world premiere of podcast Meghan, Duchess of Sussex, she pulled out all the stops.
Because let's be honest, the timing wasn't just bad, it was brutal. Almost too perfect in a way that feels suspicious. Because right when her image was already starting to lose momentum, right when the shine wasn't hitting the same, that's exactly when Jon Stewart dropped that line that didn't just land, it echoed, and suddenly everything around her started getting looked at differently. Her projects, her appearances, her tone, her delivery, everything felt like it was under a new kind of spotlight. Not the admiring kind, but the analyzing kind. The kind that doesn't clap, it questions. And then people started noticing patterns they hadn't paid attention to before. Like her podcast, the one that was supposed to show power, influence, leadership, suddenly it didn't feel inspiring. It felt rehearsed, too smooth, too polished, like every sentence had been filtered before it even reached the audience. No rough edges, no uncomfortable truths, no real vulnerability, just perfect phrasing and safe storytelling. And in today's world that doesn't connect, it distances. Because people don't want perfection anymore. They want reality. They want something messy, something flawed, something human, and what they were seeing didn't feel human enough. And that's where Stewart's joke hit differently, because it didn't just mock, it exposed. It pointed straight at that disconnect without needing to say it directly, and once people picked up on that, they couldn't unsee it. Suddenly the narrative of a self-made, resilient figure started getting questioned, because where were the real struggles, the visible setbacks, the moments of pressure that shaped someone's story? People started asking quietly, not aggressively, just curiously. And curiosity is dangerous when it turns inward like that, because it doesn't attack, it dismantles. But it didn't stop with Meghan. It never does, because the spotlight shifted and then it widened. And suddenly Prince Harry was pulled into it. Not loudly, not dramatically, but subtly, almost like a side note that ended up becoming the main focus. Because that one line, that single comparison about him being an unemployed immigrant carrying his wife's handbag, it wasn't just a joke. It tapped into something people had already been whispering but never fully said out loud, and that's what made it hit so hard, because it felt familiar, like a thought that had been floating around now finally spoken into existence. And once that image was planted, it spread, because people started replaying moments, interviews, appearances, public events, and suddenly the dynamic looked different. Meghan speaking, leading, directing, and Harry standing beside her, quieter, more reserved, almost like he had stepped into the background of his own story. And whether that's true or not didn't even matter anymore, because perception had already shifted, and once the public locks onto a version of you, breaking out of it becomes almost impossible. That's the power of a single well-placed joke. It doesn't just entertain, it redefines. And here's where it gets even more unsettling, because this wasn't coming from tabloids or online gossip channels. This came from a voice people respect, a voice known for precision, for thoughtfulness, for not wasting words. So when Jon Stewart chose to frame it that way, people didn't dismiss it. They leaned into it, they paid attention, they analyzed it, they repeated it, and just like that, the narrative wasn't controlled anymore. It was shared. And then came the silence. Not dramatic silence, not loud, attention-grabbing silence, but the kind that creeps in slowly, the kind that replaces noise with absence, and that's where things really start to unravel. Because suddenly there were no big statements, no direct responses, no public pushback, just quiet, and that quiet started speaking louder than anything she could have. Said because people weren't waiting for explanations anymore, they were watching behavior. And what they saw? Momentum fading, views dipping, buzz slowing down, projects losing energy, and the most dangerous part of all, attention shifting away. Because here's the truth nobody likes to admit, being talked about negatively is still power. It means people care. It means you're still relevant, but being ignored? That's something else entirely. That's when the connection breaks. When the audience stops engaging, stops reacting, stops investing emotionally, and once that happens, pulling them back becomes 10 times harder. And that's exactly where things seem to be heading. Because the brand that once felt magnetic now feels distant, like something people used to follow but don't feel the same pull toward anymore. And it didn't collapse because of one scandal, one mistake, one explosive moment. It shifted because of something quieter, something more subtle, something more dangerous, disconnection. And now there's this lingering question hanging in the air, heavier than anything else that's happened so far. Can she actually come back from this? Not with another polished project, not with another carefully managed appearance, but with something real, something unfiltered, something that doesn't feel like it's been designed in a boardroom. Because that's what people are waiting for now, whether they realize it or not. Because the truth is, Meghan Markle isn't at a breaking point because of controversy. She's at a turning point because of perception. And perception doesn't shout. It shifts quietly. And once it shifts, it rarely goes back. So now everything depends on what happens next. Whether she leans into authenticity or doubles down on control. Whether she steps out of the narrative or tightens her grip on it. Because the audience is still watching, still observing, still waiting, not loudly, not aggressively, but patiently. And that patience won't last forever. Because if nothing changes, if the distance keeps growing, if the silence continues stretching, then the next phase won't be backlash. It'll be disappearance. And that's the part nobody can spin, nobody can control, nobody can fix once it fully sets in. Because when the spotlight moves on, it doesn't ask for permission, it doesn't wait, it just leaves. And the question that's now hanging heavier than ever is this: was that laugh just a moment, or was it the beginning of the end?